Well, hello, Zoe. Is it your stream? Yeah? I hadn't even started reading yet, and you're disrupting. That's rare. You want to get in there? Go ahead. There you go. She went straight to the book. Hello, folks at home. Give me just a second to take my That's ramen noodles. You can't dig a nest in the ramen noodles. Do you want that stacked up? Is that what you're saying? There we go. Is that better? It's probably not. You're trying to drag them out of that corner, huh? Not. You don't know what you're doing. Neither of us knows what you're doing. Nope. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Rogan. We're gonna read some more Tolkien. I'm gonna take a part of a reefer gummy. I'm gonna take a whole reefer gummy. Tempted. Is there a good reason not to? Well, they don't get too stoned. I did that last night, though. That worked out fine. I mean, it's fine. It's relative. Yeah, it works out fine. You guys had fun, right? We had fun. Nice to see you again. I'm gonna take the other half. I'm going to, as they say, knock myself out. That is part of the idea. I have to get up for my new job in the morning. I do want to be unconscious, basically right when the stream ends. So we stop trying to dig a hole in my ramen noodles, dude. Zoe, those are not for you, my little friend. I'm going to take a dose of kratom. Oh, the treats. I see. You want the treats. I already gave you treats like 4 times. Really? All right, Zoe. I see what you're saying. Come on. Don't tear shit up. Come on. Why are you so fat? Why are you fat? Zoe isn't fat yet, but she's working on it. So she gets honorary fat points. She's assessed as fat by the fat assessors. I hate very spicy ramen noodles, so I'm snotty. All right. I'm going to take a little puff on the tobacco pipe. And we're going to go back to reading Tolkien, Lord of the Rings. I have a 1-volume copy of the trilogy. And we are still reading the prologue. And I have turned the monetization off, as I usually, if not always, do with these live readings. And I have put my PayPal link in there. You can also donate through YouTube. YouTube splits that money with me. Thanks for tipping the house if you do that. The prologue, part 4 of the prologue. And I apologize for the fan. It's too warm. I'm in Mississippi. There is an air conditioner running in the other part of the house, I think. Trailer. Might turn the fan off. I don't know. Maybe I'm going to have to learn to live with the fan. 4 of the Finding of the Ring. You know what? I can't live with the fan. I know that like background noise and surface noise is not the sound killing problem it used to be before the current generation of microphones and built-in sound modifiers, filters in anything you can record this kind of sound with, including the microphone on my laptop. I'm too old. I feel like I gotta have cleaner sound. 4 of the finding of the ring. Thanks for being back here, guys. As is told in The Hobbit, there came one day to Bilbo's door the great wizard Gandalf the Grey, and 13 dwarves with him. None other, indeed, than Thorin Oakenshield, descendant of kings, and his 12 companions in exile. With them he set out, to his own lasting astonishment, on a morning of April, it being then the year 1341 Shire reckoning, on a quest of great treasure, the dwarf hordes of the kings under the mountain, beneath Erebor and Dale, far off in the east. Should I wait for those dogs? That's a little out of control. I think last night while I was streaming, that one dog, so the people with the dog that's really going nuts back here, I'm in a trailer park, they just moved in, and it's driving closer neighbors nuts. Like at some point last night, I heard like somebody beat on the wall inside another trailer and yell, shut up at the dog. I don't know. We'll just ignore it. I can't turn them off like I turned off the fan. With them he set out, to his own lasting astonishment, on a morning of April, it being then the year 1341 Shire reckoning, on a quest of great treasure, the dwarf hordes of the kings under the mountain, beneath Erebor and Dale, far off in the east. The quest was successful, and the dragon that guarded the horde was destroyed. Yet, though before all was won, the battle of 5 armies was fought, and Thorin was slain, and many deeds of renown were done. The matter would scarcely have concerned later history, or earned more than a note in the long annals of the Third Age, but for an accident by the way. The party was assailed by orcs in a high pass of the Misty Mountains as they went towards Wilderland. And so it happened that Bilbo was lost for a while in the black orc mines deep under the mountains, and there, as he groped in vain in the dark, he put his hand on a ring lying on the floor of a tunnel. He put it in his pocket. It seemed then like mere luck. I do want the dog to stop, but there's nothing I can do. I am going to turn the fan on too. I'm already sweating. You can't see it because the light's on this side, but I just broke a sweat. Like sweat is dripping down my face. At least on low to keep my face dry. I'm in Mississippi. I'm in a trailer in Mississippi, so like it's not gonna be comfortable. Trying to find his way out, Bilbo went on down to the roots of the mountains until he could go no farther. I really can't handle the fan being on. It's just too much noise. All right. I'm gonna try one more time. I'll suffer. It's okay. You guys don't. You guys can have a fan on. At the bottom of the tunnel lay a cold lake far from the light. See, did you hear the yelling? Trying to find his way out, Bilbo went on down to the roots of the mountains until he could go no further. At the bottom of the tunnel lay a cold lake far from the light, and on an island of rock in the water lived Gollum. He was a loathsome little creature. He paddled a small boat with his large flat feet, peering with pale luminous eyes and catching blind fish with his long fingers and eating them raw. He ate any living thing, even orc, if he could catch it and strangle it without a struggle. He possessed a secret treasure that had come to him long ages ago, when he still lived in the light, a ring of gold that made its wearer invisible. It was the one thing he loved, his precious, and he talked to it, even when it was not with him. For he kept it hidden safe in a hole on his island, except when he was hunting or spying on the orcs of the mines. I expect to hear shots ring out any second. I mean, maybe I'm projecting my own. I should like dogs more. I know. I should. Maybe he would have attacked Bilbo at once if the ring had been on him when they met, but it was not, and the hobbit held in his hand an elvish knife which served him as a sword. So to gain time, Gollum challenged Bilbo to the riddle game, saying that if he asked a riddle which Bilbo could not guess, then he would kill him and eat him. But if Bilbo defeated him, then he would do as Bilbo wished. He would lead him to a way out of the tunnels. Since he was lost in the dark without hope and could neither go on nor back, Bilbo accepted the challenge, and they asked one another many riddles. In the end, Bilbo won the game, more by luck, as it seemed, than by wits. For he was stumped at last for a riddle to ask, and cried out as his hand came upon the ring he had picked up and forgotten, "What have I got in my pocket?" This Gollum failed to answer, though he demanded 3 guesses. The authorities, it is true, differ whether this last question was a mere question and not a riddle according to the strict rules of the game, but all agree that, after accepting it and trying to guess the answer, Gollum was bound by his promise. And Bilbo pressed him to keep his word, for the thought came to him that this slimy creature might prove false, even though such promises were held sacred, and of old all but the wickedest things feared to break them. But after ages alone in the dark, Gollum's heart was black, and treachery was in it. He slipped away and returned to his island, of which Bilbo knew nothing, not far off in the dark water. There, he thought, lay his ring. He was hungry now, and angry, and once his precious was with him, he would not fear any weapon at all. But the ring was not on the island. He had lost it. It was gone. His screech sent a shiver down Bilbo's back, though he did not yet understand what had happened. But Gollum had at last leaped to a guess too late. "What has it got in its pockets?" he cried. The light in his eyes was like a green flame as he sped back to murder the hobbit and recover his precious. Just in time, Bilbo saw his peril, and he fled blindly up the passage away from the water, and once more he was saved by his luck. For as he ran, he put his hand in his pocket, and the ring slipped quietly onto his finger. So it was that Gollum passed him without seeing him, and went to guard the way out, lest the thief should escape. Warily, Bilbo followed him as he went along, cursing and talking to himself about his precious, from which talk at last even Bilbo guessed the truth, and hope came to him in the darkness. He himself had found the marvelous ring and a chance of escape from the orcs and from Gollum. At length they came to a halt before an unseen opening that led to the lower gates of the mines on the eastward side of the mountains. There Gollum crouched at bay, smelling and listening, and Bilbo was tempted to slay him with his sword. But pity stayed him, and though he kept the ring, in which his only hope lay, he would not use it to help him kill the wretched creature at a disadvantage. In the end, gathering his courage, he leaped over Gollum in the dark, and fled away down the passage, pursued by his enemies' cries of hate and despair. "Thief, thief, Baggins, we hates it forever." Take some Tylenol. Ben, thanks for being here, guys. Now, it is a curious fact that this is not the story as Bilbo first told it to his companions. To them, his account was that Gollum had promised to give him a present if he won the game. But when Gollum went to fetch it from his island, he found the treasure was gone, a magic ring, which had been given to him long ago on his birthday. Bilbo guessed that this was the very ring that he had found, and as he had won the game, it was already his by right. But being in a tight place, he said nothing about it, and made Gollum show him the way out as a reward instead of a present. This account Bilbo set down in his memoirs, and he seems never to have altered it himself, not even after the Council of Elrond. Evidently, it still appeared in the original Red Book, as it did in several of the copies and abstracts. But many copies contain the true account as an alternative, derived no doubt from notes by Frodo or Samwise, both of whom learned the truth, though they seem to have been unwilling to delete anything actually written by the old hobbit himself. This is worth annotating here. Originally, Tolkien, as I discussed at length in the last stream, and I'm sure we'll come back to it many times, he was a linguist and a medievalist, and obsessed with creating the landscape of Middle-earth, the history and geography around this story, Lord of the Rings, backwards and forwards. And The Hobbit and its sequel, The Lord of the Rings, were basically the only finished popular fiction that came out of this, his obsessive writing about Middle-earth over decades. The Hobbit is basically a children's book, really good children's book. It's written on basically a 4th or 5th grade level. It's very influenced by George MacDonald's children's fiction, particularly The Princess and the Goblin. Very similar voice to Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia stories. Again, also very influenced by Princess and the Goblin by George MacDonald and his other children's books, At the Back of the North Wind, a couple others. Originally, this idea that the magic ring that Gollum had is what the war is fought over was not part of the text. The first version of The Hobbit published, the chapter about the riddle game with Gollum and the ring was substantially different. Tolkien rewrote it for reprinting once he'd figured out how the sequel was going to go. He didn't set up the sequel properly first time around. I've never read the original version of this chapter of The Hobbit that we're talking about. I mean, I don't know, like, the first hardback publication of The Hobbit must be a pretty valuable book. But I would assume that alternate version of that chapter, that the alternate version of the riddle game is online somewhere. Probably can link to it from Wikipedia. But yeah, I don't know. I've never read it. Gandalf, however, disbelieved Bilbo's first story as soon as he heard it, and he continued to be very curious about the ring. Eventually, he got the true tale out of Bilbo after much questioning, which for a while strained their friendship, but the wizard seemed to think the truth important. Though he did not say so to Bilbo, he also thought it important and disturbing to find that the good hobbit had not told the truth from the first, quite contrary to his habit. The idea of a present was not mere hobbit-like invention all the same. It was suggested to Bilbo, as he confessed, by Gollum's talk that he overheard, for Gollum did, in fact, call the ring his birthday present many times. That also Gandalf thought strange and suspicious, but he did not discover the truth in this point for many more years, as will be seen in this book. Of Bilbo's later adventures, little more need be said here. With the help of the ring, he escaped from the orc guards at the gate and rejoined his companions. He used the ring many times on his quest, chiefly for the help of his friends, but he kept it secret from them as long as he could. After his return to his home, he never spoke of it again to anyone, save Gandalf and Frodo, and no one else in the Shire knew of its existence, or so he believed. Only to Frodo did he show the account of his journey that he was writing. His sword, Sting, Bilbo hung over his fireplace, and his coat of marvelous mail, the gift of the dwarves from the dragon hoard, he lent to a museum, to the Mishel-Delving Matham House, in fact. But he kept in a drawer at Bag End the old cloak and hood that he had worn on his travels, and the ring, secured by a fine chain, remained in his pocket. He returned to his home at Bag End on June the 22nd in his 52nd year, Shire reckoning 1342, and nothing very notable occurred in the Shire until Mr. Baggins began the preparations for the celebration of his 111th birthday, Shire reckoning 1401. At this point, this history begins. Note on the Shire records. At the end of the Third Age, the part played by the hobbits in the great events that led to the inclusion of the Shire in the reunited kingdom awakened among them a more widespread interest in their own history. And many of their traditions, up to that time still mainly oral, were collected and written down. The greater families were also concerned with events in the kingdom at large, and many of their members studied its ancient histories and legends. By the end of the first century of the Fourth Age, there were already to be found in the Shire several libraries that contained many historical books and records. The largest of these collections were probably at Undertowers, at Great Smeals, and at Brandy Hall. The account of the end of the Third Age is drawn this account of the end of the Third Age is drawn mainly from the Red Book of Westmarch. That most important source for the history of the War of the Ring was so called because it was long preserved at Undertowers, the home of the Fair Barons, wardens of the Westmarch. It was in origin Bilbo's private diary, which he took with him to Rivendell. Frodo brought it back to the Shire, together with many loose leaves of notes, and during Shire Reckoning 1420 to 1421, he nearly filled its pages with his account of the war. But annexed to it and preserved with it, probably in a single red case, were the 3 large volumes bound in red leather that Bilbo gave to him as a parting gift. To these 4 volumes there was added in Westmarch a 5th containing commentaries, genealogies, and various other matter concerning the Hobbit members of the Fellowship. The original Red Book has not been preserved, but many copies were made, especially of the first volume, for the use of the descendants of the children of Master Samwise. The most important copy, however, has a different history. It was kept at Great Smeals, but was written in Gondor, probably at the request of the great-grandson of Peregrine, and completed in Shire Reckoning 1592, FA 172. Its southern scribe appended this note: Findigl, King's writer, finished this work in IV 172. I guess Roman numerals are not Roman in Middle-earth, but it is an exact copy in all details of the Thane's Book in Minas Tirith. That book was a copy made at the request of King Elisar of the Red Book of the Perionath, and was brought to him by the Thane Peregrine when he retired to Gondor in IV 64. The Thane's Book was thus the first copy made of the Red Book, and contained much that was later omitted or lost. In Minas Tirith it received much annotation and many corrections, especially of names, words, and quotations in the Elvish languages, and there was added to it an abbreviated version of those parts of the tale of Aragorn and Arwen which lie outside the account of the war. The full tale is stated to have been written by Barahir, grandson of the steward Faramir, sometime after the passing of the king. But the chief importance of Findigil's copy is that it alone contains the whole of Bilbo's translations from the Elvish. These 3 volumes were found to be a work of great skill and learning, in which between 1403 and 1418 he had used all the sources available to him in Rivendell, both living and written. But since they were little used by Frodo, being almost entirely concerned with the elder days, no more is said of them here. Since Meriadoc and Peregrine became the heads of their great families, and at the same time kept up their connections with Rohan and Gondor, the libraries at Bucklebury and Tuckborough contained much that did not appear in the Red Book. In Brandy Hall there were many works dealing with Eriador and the history of Rohan. Some of these were composed or begun by Meriadoc himself, though in the Shire he was chiefly remembered for his herb lore of the Shire, and for his reckoning of years, in which he discussed the relation of the calendars of the Shire and Bree to those of Rivendell, Gondor, and Rohan. He also wrote a short treatise on old words and names in the Shire, showing special interest in discovering the kinship with the language of the Rohirrim of such Shire words as Matham and old elements in place names. At Great Smeals, the books were of less interest to Shire folk, though more important for larger history. None of them was written by Peregrine, but he and his successors collected many manuscripts written by scribes of Gondor, mainly copies or summaries of histories or legends relating to Elendil and his heirs. Only here in the Shire were to be found extensive materials for the history of Númenor and the rising of Sauron. It was probably at Great Smeals that the Tale of Years was put together, with the assistance of material collected by Meriadoc. Though the dates given are often conjectural, especially for the Second Age, they deserve attention. It is probable that Meriadoc obtained assistance and information from Rivendell, which he visited more than once. There, through Elrond, though Elrond had departed, his sons long remained, together with some of the high elven folk. It is said that Celeborn went to dwell there after the departure of Galadriel, but there is no record of the day when at last he sought the Grey Havens, and with him went the last living memory of the elder days in Middle-earth. The Fellowship of the Ring, being the first part of The Lord of the Rings. Take it off my pipe, don't mind me. Book 1. Chapter 1. A long-expected party. Thanks for being here, guys. By the way, if you're new around here, you're welcome to hang out in the chat. I will interact with chat, especially if it's on topic. I won't let it distract me from reading too much, though. I'll say hello if you say hello. Thanks for being here, guys. Chapter 1, A Long-Expected Party. When Mr. Bilbo Baggins of Bag End announced that he would shortly be celebrating his 111st birthday with a party of special magnificence, there was much talk and excitement in Hobbiton. Bilbo was very rich and very peculiar, and had been the wonder of the Shire for 60 years, ever since his remarkable disappearance and unexpected return. The riches he had brought back from his travels had now become a local legend, and it was popularly believed, whatever the old folk might say, that the hill at Bag End was full of tunnels stuffed with treasure. And if that was not enough for fame, there was also his prolonged vigor to marvel at. Time wore on, but it seemed to have little effect on Mr. Baggins. At 90, he was much the same as at 50. At 99, they began to call him well-preserved, but unchanged would have been nearer the mark. There were some that shook their heads and thought this was too much of a good thing. It seemed unfair that anyone should possess, apparently, perpetual youth as well as, reputedly, inexhaustible wealth. It will have to be paid for, they said. It isn't natural, and trouble will come of it. But so far trouble had not come, and as Mr. Baggins was generous with his money, most people were willing to forgive him his oddities and his good fortune. He remained on visiting terms with his relatives, except, of course, the Sackville Bagginses, and he had many devoted admirers among the hobbits of poor and unimportant families. But he had no close friends until some of his younger cousins began to grow up. The eldest of these, and Bilbo's favorite, was young Frodo Baggins. When Bilbo was 99, he adopted Frodo as his heir and brought him to live at Bag End, and the hopes of the Sackville Bagginses were finally dashed. Bilbo and Frodo happened to have the same birthday, September 22nd. "You had better come and live here, Frodo, my lad," said Bilbo one day, "and then we can celebrate our birthday parties comfortably together." At that time, Frodo was still in his tweens, as the hobbits called the irresponsible 20s, between childhood and coming of age at 33. 12 more years passed. Each year, the Bagginses had given very lively combined birthday parties at Bag End. But now it was understood that something quite exceptional was being planned for that autumn. Bilbo was going to be 111, a rather curious number, and a very respectable age for a hobbit. The old Took himself had only reached 130. And Frodo was going to be 33, an important number, the date of his coming of age. Tongues began to wag in Hobbiton and Bywater, and rumor of the coming event traveled all over the Shire. The history and character of Mr. Bilbo Baggins became once again the chief topic of conversation, and the older folk suddenly found their reminiscences in welcome demand. No one had a more attentive audience than old Ham Gamgee, commonly known as the Gaffer. He held forth at the Ivy Bush, a small inn on the Bywater Road, and he spoke with some authority, for he had tended the garden at Bag End for 40 years and had helped old Holman in the same job before that. Now that he was himself growing old and stiff in the joints, the job was mainly carried on by his youngest son, Sam Gamgee. Both father and son were on very friendly terms with Bilbo and Frodo. They lived on the hill itself, in number 3 Bagshot Road, just below Bag End. "A very nice, well-spoken, gentle hobbit is Mr. Bilbo, as I've always said," the Gaffer declared. With perfect truth, for Bilbo was very polite to him, calling him Master Hamfast, and consulting him constantly upon the growing of vegetables. In the matter of roots, especially potatoes, the Gaffer was recognized as the leading authority by all in the neighborhood, including himself. "But what about that Frodo that lives with him?" asked old Noakes of Bywater. "Baggins is his name, but he's more than half a brandy buck, they say. It beats me why any Baggins of Hobbiton should go looking for a wife away there in Buckland, where folks are so queer." "And no wonder they're queer," put in Daddy Two-Foot, the Gaffer's next-door neighbor, "if they live on the wrong side of the Brandywine River and right against the old forest. That's a dark, bad place if half the tales be true." "You're right, Dad," said the Gaffer. "Not that the Brandybucks of Buckland live in the old forest, but they're a queer breed, seemingly. They fool about with boats on that big river, and that isn't natural. Small wonder that trouble came of it, I say. But be that as it may, Mr. Frodo is as nice a young hobbit as you could wish to meet, very much like Mr. Bilbo, and in more than looks. After all, his father was a Baggins. A decent, respectable hobbit was Mr. Drogo Baggins. There was never much to tell of him till he was drowned." "Drowned?" said several voices. They had heard this and other darker rumors before, of course, but hobbits have a passion for family history, and they were ready to hear it again. It's really hard not to do this with a Mississippi accent because it would fit so well. Hey, Katie, you are welcome. For the bedtime story, you are welcome. Hold on a second. Hold on. I have bad sinuses and I smoke. I mute the microphone when I make snorfy noises because it's gross and annoying when readers are snorfy in reading videos. Sorry. I was about to get distracted. I forgot for a second I'm doing something. Right, drowned. Well, so they say, said the gaffer. You see, Mr. Drogo, he married poor Miss Primula Brandybuck. She was our Mr. Bilbo's first cousin on the mother's side, her mother being the youngest of the old Tuke's daughters, and Mr. Drogo was his second cousin. So Mr. Frodo is his first and second cousin, once removed either way, as the saying is, if you follow me. It really is like Mississippi. It's like my family in Carroll County. And Mr. Drogo was staying at Brandy Hall with his father-in-law, Old Master Gorbadoc, as he often did after his marriage, him being partial to his victuals, and old Gorbadoc keeping a mighty generous table. And he went out boating on the Brandywine River, and he and his wife were drowned, and poor Mr. Frodo only a child and all. I've heard they went on the water after dinner in the moonlight, said Old Noakes, and it was Drogo's weight as sunk the boat. I've heard they went on the water after dinner in the moonlight, said Old Noakes, and it was Drogo's weight as sank the boat. Sunk. And I heard she pushed him in, and he pulled her in after him, said Sandyman, the Hobbiton miller. You shouldn't listen to all you hear, Sandyman, said the gaffer, who did not much like the miller. There isn't no call to go talking of pushing and pulling. Boats are quite tricky enough for those that sit still without looking further for the cause of trouble. Anyway, there was this Mr. Frodo left an orphan and stranded, as you might say, among those queer Bucklanders, being brought up anyhow in Brandy Hall, a regular warren by all accounts. Old Master Gorbadoc never had fewer than a couple of 100 relations in the place. Mr. Bilbo never did a kinder deed than when he brought the lad back to live among decent folk. But I reckon it was a nasty knock for those Sackville Bagginses. They thought they were going to get Bag End that time when he went off and was thought to be dead. And then he comes back and orders them off, and he goes on living and never looking a day older, bless him. What is it, Zoe? What? What is it? Yeah? You want to say hello to the stream? There's Zoe. She likes to sit in my lap when I read. But it's awkward because of you can see exactly what's going on. It's awkward. Sorry. I knew you guys would want to see the cat. I know. There's not really room. Are you going to go up there? There you go. There you go. No, you can't come back. I love you too, buddy. You're very good. All right, but you got to lie down. You got to lie down over here, Miss Purry. Right. And then he comes back and orders them off, and he goes on living and never looking a day older, bless him. And suddenly he produces an heir and has all the papers made out proper. The Sackville Bagginses won't never see the inside of Bag End now, or it is to be hoped not. There's a tidy bit of money tucked away up there, I hear tell, said a stranger, a visitor on business from Michel Delving in the West Farthing. All the top of your hill is full of tunnels packed with chests of gold and silver and jewels, by what I've heard. Then you've heard more than I can speak to, answered the gaffer. I know nothing about jewels. Mr. Bilbo is free with his money, and there seems no lack of it, but I know of no tunnel making. I saw Mr. Bilbo when he came back, a matter of 60 years ago, when I was a lad. You've had plenty of treats, Zoe. I'm not giving you more. No, you don't need more treats. You're fat. You're too fat. I saw Mr. Bilbo when he came back, a matter of 60 years ago, when I was a lad. No, you can't have more. You don't need more. I'd not long come prentice to old Holman, him being my dad's cousin, but he had me up at Bag End helping him to keep folks from trampling and trappicing all over the garden while the sale was on. So you've got to stop. You've got to stop. Stop it, stop it. All right, I'll give you more treats, but you've got to stop digging around to fuck with me while I'm streaming. Pardon my language. You made me swear. There are the treats. I threw them on the floor for you. What else do you want? You can't just traipse all over the stream. I know you just want to mess with me and mess with me. I just knocked my tobacco pipe behind the desk. I'm very tempted to stop and pull it out. I didn't really want it, but now that I can't get it, I really want it. It's bad for me. I shouldn't be smoking anyway. Where was I? Oh, right. And in the middle of it all, Mr. Bilbo comes up the hill with a pony and some mighty big bags and a couple of chests. I don't doubt they were mostly full of treasure he had picked up in foreign parts where there be mountains of gold, they say, but there wasn't enough to fill tunnels. But my lad Sam will know more about that. He's in and out of Bag End. Crazy about stories of the old days he is, and he listens to all Mr. Bilbo's tales. Mr. Bilbo has learned him his letters, meaning no harm, mark you, and I hope no harm will come of it. Elves and dragons, I says to him. Cabbages and potatoes are better for me and you. Don't go getting mixed up in the business of your betters, or you'll land in trouble too big for you, I says to him. And I might say it to others, he added, with a look at the stranger and the miller. But the gaffer did not convince his audience. The legend of Bilbo's wealth was now too firmly fixed in the minds of the younger generation of hobbits. Ah, but he has likely enough been adding to what he brought at first, argued the miller, voicing common opinion. He's often away from home, and look at the outlandish folk that visit him, dwarves coming at night, and that old wandering conjurer, Gandalf, and all. You can say what you like, gaffer, but Bag End's a queer place, and its folk are queerer. And you can say what you like about what you know no more of than you do of boating, Mr. Sandyman, retorted the gaffer, disliking the miller even more than usual. If that's being queer, then we could do with a bit more queerness in these parts. I swear he's doing it on purpose. I wasn't going to point it out again, but the gay jokes, I'm pretty sure they're intentional. Tolkien was straight, had kids, was married. He was a professor at Oxford. I'm sure he had gay friends. In his time, homosexuality was not a subject of polite conversation at all. It was still considered criminal. So, which is why there's so much made of stealth homosexual references in literature and movies from before 1960, really before 1980. That being said, nobody seems to have ever been able to set me straight on when the word queer came to mean not just strange, but gay. I don't know how far back that goes. Hello, Gandalf. How are you? You can say what you like, gaffer, but Bag End's a queer place and its folk are queerer. And you can say what you like about what you know no more of than you do of boating, Mr. Sandyman, retorted the gaffer, disliking the miller even more than usual. If that's being queer, then we could do with a bit more queerness in these parts. There's some not far away that wouldn't offer a pint of beer to a friend if they lived in a hole with golden walls. But they do things proper at Bag End. Our Sam says that everyone's going to be invited to the party, and there's going to be presents, mark you, presents for all, this very month as is. That very month was September, and as fine as you could ask. A day or two later, a rumor, probably started by the knowledgeable Sam, was spread about that there were going to be fireworks. Fireworks, what is more, such as had not been seen in the Shire for nigh on a century, not indeed since the old Duke died. Days passed, and the day drew nearer. An odd-looking wagon laden with odd-looking packages rolled into Hobbiton one evening and toiled up the hill to Bag End. The startled hobbits peered out of lamplit doors to gape at it. It was driven by outlandish folk, singing strange songs, dwarves with long beards and deep hoods. A few of them remained at Bag End. At the end of the second week in September, a cart came in through Bywater from the direction of Brandywine Bridge in broad daylight. An old man was driving it all alone. He wore a tall pointed blue hat, a long gray cloak, and a silver scarf. He had a long white beard and bushy eyebrows that stuck out beyond the brim of his hat. Small hobbit children ran after the cart all through Hobbiton and right up the hill. It had a cargo of fireworks, as they rightly guessed. At Bilbo's front door, the old man began to unload. There were great bundles of fireworks of all sorts and shapes, each labeled with a large red G rune and the elf rune. I'll show you the runes. Right there. A large red G, and it's that one, and then that's the elf rune, which looks like there's a specific letter in Hebrew that looks like that. Hold on. That was Gandalf's mark, of course, and the old man was Gandalf the Wizard, whose fame in the Shire was due mainly to his skill with fires, smokes, and lights. His real business was far more difficult and dangerous, but the Shire folk knew nothing about it. To them, he was just one of the attractions at the party. Hence the excitement of the hobbit children. "Gee for grand," they shouted, and the old man smiled. They knew him by sight, though he only appeared in Hobbiton occasionally and never stopped long. But neither they nor any but the oldest of their elders had seen one of his firework displays. They now belonged to a legendary past. When the old man, helped by Bilbo and some dwarves, had finished unloading, Bilbo gave a few pennies away, but not a single squib or cracker was forthcoming, to the disappointment of the onlookers. "Run away now," said Gandalf. "You will get plenty when the time comes." I really want to do John Huston doing Gandalf's voice. John Huston did Gandalf for the Hobbit, the TV movie, the Rankin Bass movie in 1977 or 78. I think it's 77. But that's the voice of Gandalf to me because I grew up on that movie. I was born in 71. "Run away now," but I can't do it. I can sort of do it, but I can't really do it. I feel like I should come up with a voice for Gandalf. I feel like I should come up with a voice for Gollum, too. His characters really, you hear cartoon voices for them. Like it's like it's supposed to be animated. "You will get plenty when the time comes." Then he disappeared inside with Bilbo, and the door was shut. The young hobbits stared at the door in vain for a while and then made off, feeling that the day of the party would never come. And let me point out, I hadn't noticed that before, that is a reference to how slowly this novel is starting. Because he's doing it on purpose. The orchestra's tuning up. The orchestra's tuning up. It takes a while for this novel to get going. Christ. I'm messing everything up. Yes, the day of the party will never come. Oh, it will, though. It will, don't worry. It's going to take a minute for me to get there, but... Inside Bag End, Bilbo and Gandalf were sitting at the open window of a small room looking out west onto the garden. The late afternoon was bright and peaceful. The flowers glowed red and golden, snapdragons and sunflowers, and nasturtiums trailing all over the turf walls and peeping in at the round windows. And peeping in at the round windows. "How bright your garden looks," said Gandalf. "Yes," said Bilbo, "I am very fond indeed of it, and of all the dear old Shire. But I think I need a holiday." "You mean to go on with your plan, then?" "I do. I made up my mind months ago, and I haven't changed it." "Very well. It is no good saying any more. Stick to your plan, your whole plan, mind, and I hope it will turn out for the best for you and for all of us." "I hope so. Anyway, I mean to enjoy myself on Thursday and have my little joke." Who will laugh, I wonder, said Gandalf, shaking his head. We shall see, said Bilbo. The next day more carts rolled up the hill, and still more carts. There might have been some grumbling about dealing locally, but that very week orders began to pour out of Bag End for every kind of provision, commodity, or luxury that could be obtained in Hobbiton or Bywater or anywhere in the neighborhood. People became enthusiastic, and they began to tick off the days on the calendar, and they watched eagerly for the postman, hoping for invitations. Before long, the invitations began pouring out, and the Hobbiton post office was blocked, and the Bywater post office was snowed under, and voluntary assistant postmen were called for. There was a constant stream of them going up the hill, carrying hundreds of polite variations on "Thank you, I shall certainly come." A notice appeared on the gate at Bag End: no admittance except on party business. Even those who had or pretended to have party business were seldom allowed inside. Bilbo was busy, writing invitations, ticking off answers, packing up presents, and making some private preparations of his own. From the time of Gandalf's arrival, he remained hidden from view. One morning, the hobbits woke to find the large field south of Bilbo's front door covered with ropes and poles for tents and pavilions. A special entrance was cut into the bank leading to the road, and wide steps and a large white gate were built there. The three hobbit families of Bagshot Row, adjoining the field, were intensely interested and generally envied. Old Gaffer Gamgee stopped even pretending to work in his garden. The tents began to go up. There was a specially large pavilion, so big that the tree that grew in the field was right inside it, and stood proudly near one end at the head of the chief table. Lanterns were hung on all its branches. More promising still to the hobbit's mind, an enormous open-air kitchen was erected in the north corner of the field. A draft of cooks from every inn and eating house for miles around arrived to supplement the dwarves and other odd folk that were quartered at Bag End. Excitement rose to its height. Then the weather clouded over. That was on Wednesday, the eve of the party. Anxiety was intense. Then Thursday, September the 22nd, actually dawned. The sun got up, the clouds vanished, flags were unfurled, and the fun began. Bilbo Baggins called it a party, but it was really a variety of entertainments rolled into one. Practically everybody living near was invited. A very few were overlooked by accident, but as they turned up all the same, that did not matter. Many people from other parts of the Shire were also asked, and there were even a few from outside the borders. Bilbo met the guests and additions at the new White Gate in person. He gave away presents to all and sundry. The latter were those who went out again by a back way and came in again by the gate. The sundry. That reads like like he actually wrote all and sundry and then realized he had already included all really carefully, rhetorically. There shouldn't be any sundry. The latter, the sundry, were those who went out again by a back way and came in again by the gate. Hobbits give presents to other people on their own birthdays. Not very expensive ones as a rule, and not so lavishly as on this occasion, but it was not a bad system. Actually, in Hobbiton and Bywater, every day in the year was somebody's birthday, so that every hobbit in those parts had a fair chance of at least one present at least once a week. But they never got tired of them. On this occasion, the presents were unusually good. The hobbit children were so excited that for a while they almost forgot about eating. There were toys the like of which they had never seen before, all beautiful and some obviously magical. Many of them had indeed been ordered a year before and had come all the way from the mountain and from Dale and were of real dwarf make. When every guest had been welcomed and was finally inside the gate, there were songs, dances, music, games, and of course, food and drink. There were 3 official meals: lunch, tea, and dinner or supper. But lunch and tea were marked chiefly by the fact that at those times all the guests were sitting down and eating together. At other times there were merely lots of people eating and drinking continuously from 11s until 6:30 when the fireworks started. The fireworks were by Gandalf. They were not only brought by him, but designed and made by him, and the special effects, set pieces, and flights of rockets were let off by him. But there was also a generous distribution of squibs, crackers, bacca-wrappers, sparklers, torches, dwarf candles, elf fountains, goblin barkers, and thunderclaps. They were all superb. The art of Gandalf improved with age. Yes, Zoe, are you going to bother me some more? Yeah. You know I'm trying to read, right? Okay, so you're going to let me read? Don't go digging around in the books. That's just books. There's no need to do that. Don't yak at me. Just settle. Don't start digging when I start reading again. All right? You going to lie down? All right. The art of Gandalf improved with age. There were rockets like a flight of scintillating birds singing with sweet voices. There were green trees with trunks of dark smoke. Their leaves opened like a whole spring unfolding in a moment, and their shining branches dropped glowing flowers down upon the astonished hobbits, disappearing with a sweet scent just before they touched their upturned faces. There were fountains of butterflies that flew glittering into the trees. There were pillars of colored fires that rose and turned into eagles or sailing ships or phalanx of flying swans. There was a red thunderstorm and a shower of yellow rain. There was a forest of silver spears that sprang suddenly into the air with a yell like an embattled army and came down again into the water with a hiss like 100 hot snakes. And there was also one last surprise in honor of Bilbo, and it startled the hobbits exceedingly, as Gandalf intended. The lights went out, a great smoke went up. It shaped itself like a mountain seen in the distance and began to glow at the summit. It spouted green and scarlet flames. Out flew a red golden dragon, not life-size, but terribly lifelike. Fire came from his jaws. His eyes glared down. There was a roar, and he whizzed 3 times over the heads of the crowd. They all ducked, and many fell flat on their faces. The dragon passed like an express train, turned a somersault, and burst over Bywater with a deafening explosion. The guys in Pink Floyd read this when they were young and were like, that's what our shows need to be like, yo. The dragon passed like an express train, turned a somersault, and burst over Bywater with a deafening explosion. That is the signal for supper, said Bilbo. The pain and alarm vanished at once, and the prostrate hobbits leaped to their feet. There was a splendid supper for everyone, that is, except those invited to the special family dinner party. This was held in the great pavilion with the tree. The invitations were limited to 12 dozen, a number also called by the hobbits 1 gross, though the word was not considered proper to use of people. And the guests were selected from all the families to which Bilbo and Frodo were related, with the addition of a few special unrelated friends, such as Gandalf. Many young hobbits were included, and present by parental permission, for hobbits were easygoing with their children in the manner of sitting up late, especially when there was a chance of getting them a free meal. Bringing up young hobbits took a lot of provender. Fat. There were many Bagginses and Boffins, and also many Tooks and Brandybucks. There were various Grubbs, relations of Bilbo Baggins's grandmother. Hey, what are you guys yelling about? You guys. Don't yell. Pie and Zoe both tried to sit in the same window. Come on. Settle down. Be good. Pie Wacket, be nice to your sister. She's dumb and fat. Be nice. You guys. Settle down. Be nice. You're going to start yelling at each other and hissing the second I turn away. Come on. I'm going to make you both get out of the window. Come on. They're going to start hissing at each other as soon as I start reading again. As sure as death and taxes. All right. I'm going to back up to the top of that. There were many Bagginses and Boffins, and also many Tooks and Brandybucks. There were various Grubbs, relations of Bilbo Baggins's grandmother, and various Chubbs, connections of his Took grandfather, and a selection of Burrowses, Bulgers, Bracegirdles, Brockhouses, Goodbodies, Hornblowers, and Proudfoots. Some of these were only very distantly connected with Bilbo, and some had hardly ever been in Hobbiton before, as they lived in remote corners of the Shire. The Sackville Bagginses were not forgotten. Otho and his wife Lobelia were present. They disliked Bilbo and detested Frodo.
but so magnificent was the invitation card written in golden ink that they had felt it was impossible to refuse. Besides, their cousin, Bilbo, had been specializing in food for many years, and his table had a high reputation. All the 144 guests expected a pleasant feast, though they rather dreaded the after-dinner speech of their host, an inevitable item. He was liable to drag in bits of what he called poetry, and sometimes, after a glass or two, would allude to the absurd adventures of his mysterious journey. The guests were not disappointed. They had a very pleasant feast, in fact, an engrossing entertainment, rich, abundant, varied, and prolonged. The purchase of provisions fell almost to nothing throughout the district in the ensuing weeks, but as Bilbo's catering had depleted the stocks of most of the stores, cellars, and warehouses for miles around, that did not matter much. After the feast, more or less, came the speech. Most of the company were, however, now in a tolerant mood, at that delightful stage which they called filling up the corners. They were sipping their favorite drinks and nibbling at their favorite dainties, and their fears were forgotten. They were prepared to listen to anything and to cheer at every full stop. "My dear people," began Bilbo, rising in his place. "Hear, hear, hear," they shouted, and kept on repeating it in chorus, seeming reluctant to follow their own advice. Bilbo left his place and went and stood on a chair under the illuminated tree. The light of the lanterns fell on his beaming face. The golden buttons shone on his embroidered silk waistcoat. They could all see him standing, waving one hand in the air, the other was in his trouser pocket. "My dear Bagginses and Boffins," he began again, "and my dear Tooks and Brandybucks, and Grubbs, and Chubbs, and Burrowses, and Hornblowers, and Bulgers, Bracegirdles, Goodbodies, Brockhouses, and Proudfoots." "Proud feet," shouted an elderly hobbit from the back of the pavilion. His name, of course, was Proudfoot, and well merited. His feet were large, exceptionally furry, and both were on the table. "Proudfoots," repeated Bilbo. "Also, my good Sackville Bagginses, that I welcome back at last to Bag End. Today is my 111th birthday. I am 111 today." "Hooray, hooray, many happy returns," they shouted, and they hammered joyously on the tables. Bilbo was doing splendidly. This was the sort of stuff they liked, short and obvious. "I hope you are all enjoying yourselves as much as I am." Deafening cheers, cries of yes and no, noises of trumpets and horns, pipes and flutes, and other musical instruments. There were, as has been said, many young hobbits present. Hundreds of musical crackers had been pulled. Most of them bore the mark Dale on them, which did not convey much to most of the hobbits, but they all agreed they were marvelous crackers. They contained instruments, small, but of perfect make and enchanting tones. Indeed, in one corner, some of the young Tooks and Brandybucks, supposing Uncle Bilbo to have finished, since he had plainly said all that was necessary, now got up an impromptu orchestra and began a merry dance tune. Master Everard Took and Miss Melilot Brandybuck got on a table and with bells in their hands began to dance the Springle Ring, a pretty dance, but rather vigorous. But Bilbo had not finished. Seizing a horn from a youngster nearby, he blew 3 loud hoots. The noise subsided. "I shall not keep you long," he cried. Cheers from all the assembly. "I have called you all together for a purpose." Something in the way that he said this made an impression. There was almost silence, and 1 or 2 of the Tooks pricked up their ears. "Indeed, for 3 purposes. First of all, to tell you that I am immensely fond of you all, and that 111 years is too short a time to live among such excellent and admirable hobbits." Tremendous outburst of approval. "I don't know half of you half as well as I should like, and I like less than half of you half as well as you deserve." This was unexpected and rather difficult. There was some scattered clapping, but most of them were trying to work it out and see if it came to a compliment. "Secondly, to celebrate my birthday." Cheers again. "I should say our birthday, for it is, of course, also the birthday of my heir and nephew Frodo. He comes of age and into his inheritance today." Some perfunctory clapping by the elders, and some loud shouts of "Frodo, Frodo, jolly old Frodo" from the juniors. The Sackville Bagginses scowled and wondered what was meant by coming into his inheritance. "Together we score 144. Your numbers were chosen to fit this remarkable total, one gross, if I may use the expression." No cheers. This was ridiculous. Many of the guests, and especially the Sackville Bagginses, were insulted, feeling sure they had only been asked to fill up the required number like goods in a package. One gross, indeed vulgar expression. It is also, if I may be allowed to refer to ancient history, the anniversary of my arrival by barrel at Esgaroth on the Long Lake, though the fact that it was my birthday slipped my memory on that occasion. I was only 51 then, and birthdays did not seem so important. The banquet was very splendid, however, though I had a bad cold at the time, I remember, and I could only say thank you very much. I now repeat it more correctly. Thank you very much for coming to